welcome to another episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff. I'm Mike Evans.
And I'm David Price.
And David, on today's riff, what are we going to be talking about?
It's the Elipson P1F preamplifier and A2700 power amp. There, I managed to say it.
There we go.
Yeah.
And the power amp we have our own little tag phrase for, haven't we? Which is
Yes.
the title of our riff here.
Yeah. It's the greatest Class D power amp you've never heard.
and it is. It is. It's terrific.
Yeah.
It's absolutely brilliant. We were really quite shocked by it.
We're still,
Yes.
we're still kind of slightly wondering if we've gone completely bonkers because, we neither of us are natural Class D fans. I think it's true to say.
No.
I don't think either of us are kind of religiously against the idea, but we've just never heard. It's rare to hear really good ones, and the really good ones that we do, who we try and cover, obviously on Hi-Fi Riff. But it's still, I'd say, developing, isn't it, Class D? There's a way to go to really beat a really good Class A or Class AB power amp, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Certainly in the high end.
I mean, I don't think either. Well, certainly I wasn't particularly familiar with Elipson. Hadn't heard any of their products before. Understand they used to make some speakers back in the day.
So again, this kind of shows how sort of parochial we are in the UK, at least, because Elipson's a very well-established French brand, basically very well known for its loudspeakers, and has been going since 1938. Well, I've never noticed it.
No, sure.
So,
and quirky-looking loudspeakers as well.
Yeah, so some very interesting. If you look on their website, they've had some very kind of interesting-looking sort of podule-type speakers.
They weren't using the same design team for this amp because it really doesn't look very exciting. So just to sort of set the scene here, so it's a Class D amp. We're a bit meh. It doesn't look particularly special, so we're still a bit meh. It's not like the biggest, heaviest, weightiest thing in the world. So again, still not quite. Jury's still out.
Yeah, you could pick it up. If we could have been bothered, we could just be sort of handing it round now.
Yes.
Which is not something you can normally do for a 400 watt RMS into 8 ohms power amp.
Yes. So you can only imagine, when we sort of fired it up, we were sort of both looking at each other thinking, whoa, hang on a minute, that sounds really, does that sound really good, or is that me?
Yes.
And it did sound really good. It sounded amazing. So
there could have been something in our tea, but I don't think there was.
And the price tag?
Yeah, so the power amp is 2,999. So $3,000.
Yes.
It looks like a kind of pretty sort of anonymous sort of universal type hi-fi power amp that would sell for something like that. It's not badly finished, is it?
No,
it's
okay.
It's nicely, it's reasonably well made.
Screws are on the side of the box and stuff like that. So a few things which maybe sort of slightly more premium amps wouldn't have, but
I mean, for example, the Marantz PM10, which is obviously much more expensive, but it's an integrated. But the Marantz is way better made in terms of its kind of physical
and heavier
feel, and heavier as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of quite anonymous, and as you say, it's not particularly attractively styled. It's all right, I think. But the surprise was when we plugged it in and switched it on.
Yes, and in fact, it was on the anniversary of Rush's Signals album's 40th anniversary. So we listened to some, some Rush.
Yeah, because you were there, Mike.
Because I was there. But it's quite often on our sort of playlist because it's
one of our favourites,
and it's one of the sort of benchmarks, isn't it? So it was amazing. That's incredible. We listened to New World Man, which was one of the Signals from the album, and the bass line in particular was absolutely pumping out. And you could follow Geddy's bass without any problem at all, absolutely note for note. And I can't begin to tell you the amount of systems I've heard where it's just a blur.
Yeah.
And Neil Peart's hi-hat, ride cymbals were just crystal clear. Soundstage was amazing.
Yeah.
And we'd done a bit of listening on that day to a few other things.
We had,
and that was the best we'd heard.
By far.
By far,
yeah.
So we were really shocked, I think, was probably the right word. This Class D amp
Yeah.
It sounds so good.
So I think with many Class Ds, even some very high-end ones actually that I've heard, the bass can sound a bit gloopy, a bit sort of syrupy and kind of but this was really tight, wasn't it?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Crystal clear.
Yeah, and this was through my Yamaha NS1000Ms, which if there's a problem in the bass, they'll tell you about it.
Yes.
You know.
And they're not that easy to drive.
No.
But it had no problem at all with that. It's got loads of current, loads of power.
Yeah.
I mean, and as a result, great dynamics.
Yeah.
You know, that peak current delivery, which we talk about quite a lot, was no issue whatsoever. You didn't feel it struggled at all. It was completely control of the drive units.
That's another great point, because again, so many Class Ds that I've heard have a quite flat sound. So they've actually on paper got a lot of power.
Yes.
But they don't seem to be able to kind of pick up their skirts and run, as it were, when they have to.
Sure.
It's like summoning it up is a big deal.
Yes.
You know, it's like it's like trying to get my cat out of my way. He really doesn't want to move. He only does when he has to. So, but this was very fast, wasn't it?
Amazing.
Tracked dynamics really well, and that makes for a very expressive sound, doesn't it?
It does. And we tried quite a few different things. A couple of. It's like Asia by Steely Dan.
Yeah.
That actually, it's a beautifully recorded album.
Yeah.
But it also highlights any shortcomings in the equipment as well, because you've got to get it right.
Yeah.
I thought that sounded magnificent.
Yeah. So Asia's an interesting album to me, because it on so hi-fi it sounds great. Then when you get really good hi-fi, it begins to sound a bit not so great.
Sure.
And then when you get absolutely top quality hi-fi, you begin to realise that it is great again. If that makes sense.
I don't know how that happens, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The other album for me, which is like that, is Permanent Waves by Rush.
Yeah.
So you listen to it on something cheap, sounds okay.
Yeah.
Listen to it on something quite expensive, sounds naff and awful.
Yeah.
Listen to it on something high end, it's like, my God, Terry Brown, you're a genius producer.
Yeah.
How did I not know?
Takes the veil away, doesn't it?
Really
and
does.
just unlocks everything.
I'm glad you've said that, because I've often thought that was just me being crazy.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So this tell me a little bit about this, because you phoned up the Elipson team, had a chat with them to ask some questions about what's inside the box.
Well, I got I didn't speak to them directly, but I got a very interesting reply that because most Class Ds are now using a version of a Hypex Class D power module, basically.
Yeah.
Because you can buy it and it sounds very good, and it's designed by a sort of real sort of egghead boffin called Bruno Putzis, who really knows his stuff and has done great.
Such a good name.
It's so cool, isn't it? It's Bond villain level name,
really
isn't it?
Yeah, I love
so maybe I should lend him my cat.
Well, yes,
but
sounds actually like a character out of Happy Days.
So anyway, apologies to you, Bruno, but for our stupid comments about your name. But he really knows his stuff, does great stuff, and he's done Hypex and now more recently Encore, and a lot of the great, very good new Class Ds that we're now hearing have Encores in, and the Marantz PM10 integrated amp was one of many examples.
Yeah.
So I was fully expecting it to have Hypex Encore power modules, and I asked the UK importer, and no, it doesn't. It has a fully bespoke amplifier. So to quote my source, one of the very first to work, the amp, the A2700 is one of the very first amps to work with this type of Class D amplifier. They said 100% our design.
Well, so now this isn't going to be the first riff we've done with 100% our design, because obviously we've done some chord riffs before.
Yeah.
We've done the Lindac as well with their own new design. It seems to the way in which breakthrough technology happens now, isn't it? So absolute hats off to Elipson for doing this, because they've come up with the best preamp, the best Class D you've ever heard of.
Yeah.
For us, I think probably by quite a long margin.
Yeah.
This is kind of quite groundbreaking, really.
Yes, and it's all the more surprising because they're basically a speaker company.
Yes.
You know, so
right.
presumably they've hired someone very clever who knows his onions, and is doing great work. But I think that the thing for us is it's such a surprise. Just came out of the blue. I think most people, well, if you've decided to watch this riff, then thank you. But most people won't be interested because it's not a big name in the UK, and you know, who cares, etc. But it's an absolute diamond, I think, this little power amp.
Yeah.
And it can give, so it does 400 into 8 ohms, 700 into 4, I think 900 claimed into 2. That's, you know, that's going some. And you can bridge them for 1400 watts RMS per side, which is not to be sniffed at, I'd say.
Sure, wow.
You know, that's kind of knocking your house down level of you know, cracking your ceiling. And frankly, I wouldn't like to listen at that level.
No, sure.
But it drove my NS1000s brilliantly, which, as you say, are tricky beasts to really get the best from. They'll sound all right with almost anything because they're relatively high sensitivity, 92 dB, but they've 91, 92, but they've got very kind of fussy. They're fussy in kind of load terms, and they really tell you whether the power amp that's driving them is up to it or not.
Oh gosh, it's caught quite a few products out in our time, hasn't it? Listening to those. I'd like to plug it into my isobarics and have a listen to it. That'll be an interesting.
I reckon it will do well.
I think it would be brilliant.
Yeah.
I'm just really impressed by it. It's terrific.
Maybe a Triumph pair. Or something.
Yeah,
that would be fun, wouldn't it?
Could you imagine that?
Or a 6-pack or whatever.
It'd be quite expensive. It would be quite expensive.
Yeah.
It's like they used to do that with the 250s, didn't they?
Yeah.
Put 3 250s into barracks. We could do the same. Do the same with the Elipson.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I hope that, you know, the design. Was there ever a French Bond villain? Because the designer of this needs to have a French Bond villain name, doesn't it?
He needs to have his evil lair, doesn't he?
Yes,
Where he can design really good sounding Class D amplifiers forevermore. Maybe a Citroen SM parked outside.
Absolutely.
You know,
perfect.
So that would be good.
Perfect. Yeah.
But also for completeness' sake, we want to tell you our thoughts on the P1F preamp, and it basically, obviously, Elipson wants to sell the two as a pair, and it's a very good combination. We would say, I think that the power amp is the standout of the two.
It's the star.
But the preamp is very, very good, and it's something like, I think it's 2,799 quid as it stands. It's got MMMC phono stage, which is really good and incredibly quiet. It's got a DAC, an ESS Sabre 9028 Q2M, decent DAC, very nice, you know, decent DAC section in the preamp, and you know, it's just great with line level inputs as well. It's really, really quiet. You can turn this thing up very loud, and there's no noise, there's no hiss, there's no hum, and it's clean and it's open, and it hooks up to the power amp via balanced cables. So you know, it's a really nice pair. So normally I'd be saying, you know, the power amp is amazing and who cares about the preamp, because so often when I do pre-power combinations, you know, there's only one real star and you just say forget about the other one, you know. But this to me would be a perfectly good pairing at £6,000, I think, as a pre-power.
Sure, but I think the standout headline is we hadn't really heard a Class D amp that sound this good before.
No.
And you know, so amazingly well done to Elipson for doing that. And you know, we're all hugely impressed. So excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
Great value for money.
Let's do a riffometer on it, shall we? What are we going to give it?
So I think 9.
Okay.
Which for me is higher than I've ever given anything Class D before. So.
Yeah, well, you know, we've got to go for it, haven't we? We've got to just sort of tip your hat to this one and say, you know, fantastically well done, great achievement.
Yeah.
And, you know, let's hope that Elipson are no longer sort of hidden from everybody's view if they can produce products of this magnitude.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, the other thing, just very quickly, Mike, before you give us your verdict on it, given the energy crisis at the moment and the fact that power is, you know, stupid, is the cost of power and electricity has gone crazy. it makes even more sense because it has a very low power consumption relative to my valve amp or my Class A, integrated or whatever else, or my Class A or power amp. So if you want to, maybe it won't keep you warm. It won't, unlike many of the amps that I own, won't heat your room as well over the winter. But it makes all the more sense now.
It'll pay for itself.
It'll kind of pay for itself, and if you've been running a large valve amp, for the last year, then watch your electricity bills go down with this product.
So we're now doing energy-saving tips on Mike and Dave's
Absolutely,
Hi-Fi Riff.
yes.
Good,
Save energy. Put on a sweater and buy an Elipson A2700 power amp.
The best Class D you've never heard of.
Exactly.
And you have now. You've heard of it now.
Exactly.
So there we go.
Yeah.
Mine's going to be a 9 as well.
Okay.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Because what's not to like? It's great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So look, there we are. Thanks very much indeed for watching this episode of Mike and Dave's Hi-Fi Riff, and we'll very much look forward to having you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.